please let me be straightforward. So Ukraine and its partners are looking for different ways to bring Russia and Putin to justice. I mean, the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for Putin, so Putin is indicted. And Ukraine and the world are also working on creating a special tribunal. Any of these mechanisms will really be able to fulfill the ultimate goal to punish Putin, do you think?
Look, Henry, I think we have to be realistic. Myself, yourself, and so many of my Ukrainian friends dream of the day that we bring Putin and the likes of the Belarusian president and his other cronies to The Hague. It is very, very unlikely to happen. There is an arrest warrant for Putin. I think it's very, very unlikely that he is going to travel to any countries where that arrest warrant is likely to be executed. I really, for almost 20 months now, I've been drawing the parallels between Putin and Hitler and between what's happening now with what happened in the Second World War. When the Second World War broke out, the old League of Nations was pretty useless. There was no negotiating with Hitler. The Second World War could only be brought to a conclusion with the absolute defeat of Germany. The difference is, and I think every sane person realizes, we are never going to invade Russia. That defeated Hitler and that defeated Napoleon. So I don't ever see a sensible option of invading Russia. But most certainly, the only successful conclusion that I see to this war is the absolute military defeat of Russia in Ukraine. Ukraine's borders returned to 1991, and then security guarantees, which I think should be membership of the EU and NATO, secured soon after that for Ukraine going forward. When we look then at punishment for Russia, I'm afraid we must look at increasingly harsh sanctions. It is absolutely, and I'm going to choose my words carefully, despicable and disgusting what FIFA did yesterday, allowing Russia back into international football competition. In terms of punishment, the only way we can punish Russia is by making Russia a pariah. If Putin is brought to justice, and if Putin meets a bad end, which he may do, it can only be at the hands of his own people, the Russian people. It is ultimately the Russian people who must stand up and take responsibility for what they are doing in Ukraine and what is being done in their name in Ukraine. NATO or Ukraine or anybody else is never going to invade Russia to capture Putin and his cronies. So we really are left with the only option to be military defeat of Russia in Ukraine, followed by sanctions, etc.
Yeah, well, you just said the very proper word, they are doing in Ukraine. That means like a collective responsibility for the nation. But do you think this is ever going to happen in Russia? Do you think they will, all of a sudden just say, what are we doing? We're murdering people. We're killing people. We're destroying, devastating the whole state. For what? Because Putin told us so. Do you think this is still
Henry,
pardon me, yes. Go ahead.
Well, Henry, I was going to say, you know the answer to this better than I do, because
Absolutely.
You grew up, as I understand it, in the last days of the Soviet Union, and you come from a country which is a neighbor of Putin and Russia, and you understand better than any of us in the West. I've certainly been working to understand since 2016. But you understand better than any of us in the West what Russia is really about. And it was when I lived among Ukrainians and met many folk from the Baltics also that I really started to learn what Russia is all about. So look, what I would say, a student of history as I am, observation from history, the Russian people, it can never be said, have any great tradition of thirsting after freedom or democracy. What the Russian people have always thirsted after has been a strong leader. And this, to my view, goes back for centuries. If we look at the Ukrainian example, or indeed the example in the Baltics, we have a very, very different tradition coming from the people up, coming from society and the ground up. So, is that going to change among the Russian people? Are there any good Russians? There must be.
Must be, yeah.
There absolutely must be, and we know that there are, dissidents like. I'm thinking of the Garry Kasparov, who is somebody who I follow and admire very much, who is obviously a dissident and a voice of reason from the Russian community. And there are many others. But we also know, and you'll correct me, you may be better on the latest figures, but in the region of 4 out of 5 Russians in every poll that is carried out consistently support Putin and support the war against Russia. And look, I'm going to be very visceral about this. There are well over 100,000 war crimes being investigated by Ukraine's prosecutor general with the full support of the international community. There are over 93,000 crimes of sexual violence. We're talking about the rape not just of women, but of children and babies. The most horrendous, despicable, barbaric acts being carried out. These are not being carried out by Putin or his cronies in the Kremlin. These are being carried out by Russian citizens who happen to be members of the armed forces. So there's something very sick. And, as a student of history, we know that the Russian hordes raped over 2 million European women between 1944 and 1945 on their way through Poland and the east of Germany into the final downfall of Berlin and so forth. So this would appear to be a pattern of barbarism which is deeply embedded in the Russian people. But do I think the Russian people can change? At the age of 60, I want to believe the very best in humanity. But at the age of 60, everything I know about Russia and the Russian people represents the very worst in humanity. But I will say it is the Russian people who must see the light and who must change. And if Putin is going to be brought down, he can be defeated outside Russia, and that alone may be sufficient for the Russian people to turn against him. I think it will be.